Since its establishment, NHK Science and Technology Research Laboratories, or NHK STRL for short, has conducted studies and research as the sole institute in Japan to specialize in broadcast technology. NHK STRL was established in 1930. Not long after, it began developing television broadcast technology. In 1953, NHK began TV broadcasting, and STRL began color broadcasting research. Color broadcasting began 7 years later. And the 1964 Tokyo Olympics propelled it into the public eye. In the same year, 1964, NHK STRL embarked on research into HDTV, footage with higher definition and greater resolution. In 1966, it began R&D into satellite broadcasting with the goal of making broadcasts available in every corner of the country. In 1984, the world's first direct satellite broadcasting began. Meanwhile, in 1979, NHK STRL led the world in advocating and researching neocognitron, which paved the way for AI technology. Then, in 1985, it commenced operation of an emergency warning broadcasting system. The development of displays and HDTV equipment progressed. And in the 1980s, research began on integrated services digital broadcasting. BS digital broadcasting began in 2000 and terrestrial digital broadcasting in 2003. NHK STRL has also been developing closed captioning and other user-friendly broadcasting initiatives. In 2013, Hybridcast, a new service that integrates broadcasting and the internet, was introduced to NHK General TV. Then in 2018, more than 20 years after research and development commenced in 1995, and after extensive testing, 4K and 8K ultra-high-definition television broadcasting became available to the public. Going forward, NHK STRL will advance development of next-generation terrestrial broadcasting and large, flexible displays. It will also continue its study of new connected media services, efficient content production, utilizing AI and other cutting-edge technologies, and universal service. What's more, with its sights set on achieving a new viewing style, NHK STRL will continue its research and development of high-resolution VR video, AR services, 3D video, and more. NHK Science and Technology Research Laboratories will continue to lead the way in the research and development of media technologies and services.